You're still here? Thank you. I need to know I'm not alone in this. Come at the city you're watching from. It helps more than you know. My son looked me dead in the eye and said, Mom, we're not doing this again. You have plenty of money. Figure it out yourself. Those were his exact words. I remember them because I wrote them down that night, sitting at my kitchen table in the dark, the way you write down something you don't want to believe you heard correctly. That was 14 months ago. What happened after that? What I did, what I discovered, what nearly destroyed my family, and then somehow rebuilt it into something I'd never had before. That's what I want to tell you today, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this actually started, because if I just tell you what I did, you won't understand why. My name is Lorraine. I'm 69 years old, and I live in a small house in Asheville, North Carolina, the same house I moved into after my husband Gerald passed away 8 years ago. I downsized from the family home in Charlotte, the house where I raised my 2 children, packed 31 years of living into a moving truck, and told myself that this was just the next chapter. Gerald and I had bought a cabin in the mountains outside of Boone when the kids were young. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a wood-burning stove, a wraparound porch that looked out over a valley that changed colors every fall like something out of a painting. We'd saved for 2 years to afford the down payment, driven up every school break, every long weekend we could manage. It was the place where my kids learned to fish and read by firelight and stop complaining about not having Wi-Fi. After Gerald died, that cabin became the most important thing I owned. Not for what it was worth, though property values in that area had climbed considerably over the years, but for what it held. His fishing rod still hung on the back wall. His handwriting was still on the inside cover of the log we kept, recording every visitor, every first snowfall, every bear sighting. I couldn't let go of it. I didn't want to. My son's name is Garrett. He's 45, works in commercial real estate in Charlotte, and has always been the kind of man who enters a room and immediately starts calculating how to get the most out of it. I don't say that to be cruel. It's just who he is. Gerald used to say Garrett was born with a calculator in his head. It served him well in business. It made him difficult to be close to. My daughter's name is Willa. She's 42, teaches 3rd grade in Raleigh, married to a man named Rob who I genuinely like, and has 2 daughters, Ivy and June. Willa is softer than her brother, more sensitive, more likely to apologize even when she hasn't done anything wrong. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out for a long time, was how much she'd been hiding behind that softness. The third person in this story is my nephew, Owen. He's the son of my late brother, Hank, who died of a heart attack 5 years ago at 63. Owen is 38, single, works as a high school shop teacher in Johnson City, Tennessee, and has been driving over the mountain to check on me once a month for the past 3 years without being asked. He brings firewood in winter. He fixed my gutters last spring. He comes over on Sundays sometimes, and we watch old movies, and he falls asleep in Gerald's chair, and I let him because someone should be sleeping in that chair. Owen is not in my will. He is never asked to be. He doesn't know what's about to happen. It started in January with my sister-in-law, Bet. She was Gerald's younger sister, 71 years old, living alone in Knoxville since her husband ran off with a dental hygienist 12 years ago. Bet and I had been close for decades. We talked every Sunday. She was funny and sharp and said things that made me laugh even when I didn't want to. She called me on a Wednesday morning and told me she'd been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Stage 3. She said it like she was reading a grocery list, which was pure Bet. The kind of woman who delivers hard news without melodrama because she's decided she won't give the hard news more power than it deserves. Then she said, I just needed to tell someone who would actually hear me. I called Garrett first. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, Mom, I'm about to get on a call. What's up? It's about Aunt Bet. She's been diagnosed with Bet Lorraine. I'm sorry, I literally have to take this. Can we talk tonight? He didn't call that night. I called Willa next. She picked up and I could hear her classroom in the background, the scrape of chairs, a child asking something about crayons. Mom, everything okay? Bet has cancer, honey. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3. A pause. Then, oh no, that's awful. I'm so sorry. And then lower to the classroom. Okay, everyone, eyes on your papers. And then back to me. Mom, I'm in the middle of the school day. Can I call you at 4? She didn't call until 6:30. By then, I'd already cried twice and eaten half a sleeve of crackers standing over the kitchen sink. When she finally called, she said all the right things. She was sorry. It was terrible. Bet was in her prayers, but there was a wall between us that I'd been feeling for a while, a kind of managed politeness that didn't have room for real grief. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark and listened to the house settle and thought about the last time Garrett had called me just to talk. Not to ask about the cabin rental calendar, not to mention, for the fourth time, that the property taxes on a mountain cabin were a lot for someone on a fixed income to manage alone. Just to talk. I couldn't remember when. I thought about the last time Willa had visited without it, coinciding with a school break and a need for free babysitting for Ivy in June. I thought about how I'd paid for Rob's dental surgery 3 years ago when their insurance fell short, how I'd quietly written a check and told Willa not to worry about paying me back, how I'd never mentioned it again. I thought about how Garrett had asked me, twice, to consider putting the cabin in a family trust, which his attorney had drafted, which would have given him significant management authority while I was still alive. I thought about Owen showing up last November in the dark and the cold with a cord of split wood he'd cut himself, stacking it neatly beside my back door without saying a word about it except, "Winters come fast up here, Aunt Lorraine." Around 2 in the morning, I got up, made chamomile tea, and sat at the kitchen table, and I started to think clearly for the first time in a long time. Over the next few weeks, I drove to Knoxville every Tuesday to sit with Bet during her treatments. The chemo was brutal. She'd lose a morning to nausea, and then by afternoon, she'd be sitting up in bed asking me if I'd heard the latest about her neighbor's ridiculous HOA dispute. She had more fight in her than anyone I've ever known. During one of those afternoons, I told her about the phone calls, about Garrett and his call he had to take, about Willa and her 4 o'clock that became 6:30. Bet was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Lorraine, stop making excuses for them. They're busy. Everyone's busy. Owen's busy. He still shows up. Owen doesn't have kids. Owen doesn't have reasons. He just has priorities, and you're one of them." She shifted against her pillows. "Gerald used to say you loved those kids so hard you forgot to teach them how to love you back." I looked out the hospital window. The parking lot was gray and wet. "You need to decide something," she said. "Not about them. About yourself. About what kind of woman you're going to be for whatever time you've got left. Are you going to keep waiting for them to show up? Or are you going to start making decisions that protect you?" I drove home that night in the rain and I knew something had shifted. I'm not going to pretend I made up my mind all at once. It took 3 more things. The first was the group text. It appeared in March, started by Garrett, titled, "And I want you to know this is real, Boone Cabin Strategy." The first message read, "Hey Willa, been thinking we should probably get ahead of the maintenance situation up there? Those appliances are original. The deck has some rot. If we're going to maximize the asset, we need a plan." Maximize the asset. That was my cabin. That was where Gerald taught Garrett to clean a fish when he was 8 years old. That was an asset. Willa had replied, "Totally agree. Also, should we talk about the rental calendar? Mom doesn't really use it in summer anymore." I wasn't added to this group text. I only found out because Willa accidentally forwarded it to me while trying to send it to Rob. The second thing was my fall. I was carrying boxes from my spare bedroom in April. I was reorganizing, something I do when I'm anxious, and I slipped on the hardwood floor and came down hard on my right side. I lay there for a moment checking my parts. My hip was bruised badly enough that I couldn't put weight on it properly, but nothing was broken. I called Garrett. He told me to call 911 and said he'd try to get up that weekend. I called Willa. She didn't pick up. I called Owen. He was in Johnson City, an hour and 40 minutes away. He was at my front door in an hour and 35 minutes. He helped me to the couch, got ice, made soup from what was in my refrigerator, and slept in the spare room to make sure I was all right through the night. He drove me to urgent care the next morning and sat in the waiting room for 2 hours reading a 4-year-old issue of Field and Stream without complaining. The third thing was Garrett coming to visit in May. Not to see me, I would come to understand, but to scout. He arrived on a Saturday looking crisp in the way he always does. Khakis and a collared shirt like he's always just come from somewhere important. He hugged me and asked how I was feeling, and then, within 40 minutes, we were on the porch and he was looking out at the view. Not Gerald's view, not our family's view, but the view. With a particular expression I recognized from watching him talk about properties. "You know what this place could bring on the short-term rental market?" he said. "Even conservatively, you're looking at $1,200–1,500 a week in peak season. You're leaving real money on the table, Mom. I don't want to rent it. I'm just saying, for the future. When you need liquidity, I have what I need, Garrett." He turned to look at me. There was something careful in his eyes. "You had Dad's life insurance. That's been 8 years. How are your accounts looking?" "My accounts are my business." "Mom, I'm asking because I care. You're asking because you're calculating." I set down my sweet tea. "This is Gerald's cabin. It's mine. And I'd appreciate it if you'd stop treating it like a line item." He didn't yell. He never yells. He just got quiet in that way that means he's recalibrated. "I just want to make sure you're protected." "I'm fine, Garrett." He left the next morning. Before he did, he asked me one more time if I'd thought about the family trust his attorney had drawn up. That Monday, I called my own attorney. His name is Walter Deems. He was Gerald's attorney for 30 years, and he was the one who helped me navigate the estate after Gerald passed. He's 78 and semi-retired. But when I called and said I needed to talk about my will, he said, "Come Thursday at 10. I sat across from Walter in his office full of fishing photos and old law books and told him everything. He listened the way good lawyers listen, without interrupting, without reacting, just taking it all in. When I finished, he said, "What do you want to do?" "I want to change my will." "In what direction?" I told him. "The cabin goes to Owen. My savings, after a few charitable gifts to the Asheville Humane Society and the Boone Library, would be divided, a meaningful portion to Owen, and smaller bequests to Garrett and Willa that acknowledged them without rewarding them for behavior that had broken my heart." Walter put down his pen. "Lorraine, are you doing this out of anger?" I thought about it honestly. Some anger, but mostly clarity. I've been watching these people for 69 years. I finally believe what I'm seeing. They can contest it, then help me make sure they can't win. We spent 2 sessions building the documentation. Walter arranged for a neuropsychologist named Dr. Anita Patel to administer a cognitive assessment. I scored well. Dr. Patel told me afterward that my processing speed was in the top quartile for my age group, and that anyone challenging my competency would be walking into a very unfavorable situation. We recorded a video statement in Walter's office. 3 tries. The first 2 I cried. The third time I made it through. "My name is Lorraine Grace Whitfield," I said to the camera. "I am 69 years old, of sound mind and body, and I am making these changes of my own free will. I want to be clear about why." And then I explained, not with bitterness. I tried hard not to let bitterness in, but with honesty. I explained about the phone calls that didn't come, the fall, the group text about maximizing the asset. I explained about Owen and what showing up actually looks like when someone means it. "I'm not writing my children out of love," I said at the end. "I'm writing myself back in." I did not tell Garrett or Willa. I did not tell Owen either. Walter advised me not to, said it was cleaner and fairer to let the will speak when it needed to. I gave them one chance first. In June, I sent a text to both of them asking them to come to Asheville for dinner the following Saturday. Not the cabin, my house. I cooked pot roast and made Willa's favorite banana pudding. They both came, Garrett driving up from Charlotte, Willa from Raleigh without the kids, which meant she was taking it more seriously than usual. We sat at the dining room table, the same one that was in the Charlotte house, the one where Gerald used to sit at the head and tell long stories that went nowhere and made everyone laugh anyway. And I told them what I needed to tell them. I said I felt invisible to them. I said that I understood their lives were full and demanding and that I wasn't asking them to sacrifice everything, but that I was asking them to see me. Actually see me, not as a phone call to return eventually, not as a future inheritance, not as a cabin on a mountain that was leaving money on the table. As their mother, as a person. Garrett went quiet in his calculated way. Willa started crying immediately, which I'd learned over the years didn't necessarily mean she understood. It sometimes just meant she was uncomfortable. "Mom, we love you," Garrett said. "I know you do, but love is also what you do, not just what you feel. We're here right now. I had to schedule you both like a dentist appointment." Willa wiped her eyes. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Garrett's jaw tightened. "What do you want from us? I'm running a business. Willa is teaching full-time and raising 2 kids. We can't drop everything every time." "Every time what?" "I have a serious question. Every time I need something or every time I exist?" He didn't answer. And that silence told me more than anything he could have said. "I'm not asking you to drop everything," I said. "I'm asking you to show up sometimes, just sometimes, without being asked, without it being about what you need." The dinner ended badly. Not explosively. Garrett doesn't do explosions, but coldly. He excused himself to make a call and never quite came back to the table emotionally. Willa cried into her banana pudding and apologized vaguely for things she couldn't quite name. They left before 9. Owen texted me that night, just checking in the way he does. I didn't tell him what happened. I just said it was a long day. He sent back a thumbs up and a photo of a deer in his backyard. Summer came. The group texts about the cabin continued. They'd added Willa's husband Rob to it, which told me the scope of what they were planning. Garrett sent me an article about estate planning for folks in your season of life, which was the most condescending thing I'd received since a doctor once told me to try to stay positive after Gerald's diagnosis. Then, in August, Willa called me on a weeknight. Her voice was different, thinner somehow, stretched. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you to not panic." My stomach dropped. "Okay." "Rob and we're having some serious financial trouble. His company restructured and he was let go in April." "April?" "Willa, it's August." I know. I should have told you. We've been trying to handle it, but we're 3 months behind on the mortgage and we don't have a lot of options left." I sat down. "What are you asking me?" A long pause. "I was wondering, the cabin, if we could talk about not selling it, but if there was a way to use the equity, a loan, or you want me to take out a loan against the cabin. Or Garrett said there might be a way to structure it where the cabin goes into the trust now instead of later, and we could draw against Garrett is involved in this conversation." Another pause, longer this time. "He said it might make sense, financially." I pressed my hand flat on the kitchen counter. I needed something solid. "Willa, does Garrett also know about Rob's job?" Yes, he knew. "Did he suggest this plan?" Silence. "He did, didn't he?" "Mom, don't be angry at him. He's trying to help. He's trying to access my assets through you because he knows I'll have a harder time saying no to you than to him." I kept my voice level. I was proud of that. "I love you, Willa. I love your daughters. But I am not signing anything. Not a trust, not a loan agreement, nothing that gives anyone else control of what I have while I'm still here." She started crying. "So what are we supposed to do?" "You talk to a financial counselor. You look at refinancing. You do what every other family does when they hit a hard stretch. We're your family. You are. and I will help you think through options, but not this way." She hung up upset. Within an hour, Garrett called. He didn't waste time. "Mom, I need you to understand the reality of Willa's situation. I understand it fine. You're sitting on an asset that could solve this problem immediately. That asset is your father's cabin, Garrett. Dad's been gone 8 years. At some point, don't finish that sentence. A beat. Then we're going to need to have a serious conversation about this. As a family, I think you should consider giving us power of attorney for financial decisions, at least until absolutely not. Mom, you had a fall in April. You're living alone. You're 69 years old. We just want to make sure you're protected." It was the second time he'd used that word in 6 months. Protected. I'd started to hear it differently than he meant it. "Garrett," I said, "you will not get power of attorney over my finances. You will not put the cabin in any trust you or your attorney controls. And I need you to hear this clearly. I know exactly what I have, where it is, and what I want to do with it. I am not confused. I am not declining. I am not a problem to be managed." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I won't forget. "I hope you don't come to regret this stubbornness when you actually need us." I said, "I already learned not to count on that." I called Walter the next morning. 2 days later, I was back in his office. "There's one more thing I need to do," I told him. "A video statement, in addition to the cognitive assessment, and I want documentation of every conversation." He nodded. "The texts, all of them. The group texts about the cabin, including that." Walter leaned back. "Lorraine, I want to ask you something. If your children came to you genuinely and asked for help, not demanded, not maneuvered, just asked, would you help them?" I thought about that for a long time. Yes, of course I would. "Then maybe we leave a door open in this conversation. Not in the will. The will is the will, but in what you say to them." That was good counsel. That was why Gerald had trusted him for 30 years. The letter came on a Thursday in September. Certified mail, which I had to sign for. The return address was a law office in Charlotte. Inside was a petition for the appointment of a limited guardian for financial matters, signed by both Garrett and Willa, supported by a letter from a doctor. Fielding, who stated that based on information provided by family members, I demonstrated signs consistent with financial vulnerability and early cognitive concern. I hadn't seen a Dr. Fielding in my life. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then I called Walter. Then I called Owen. Owen showed up the next afternoon. I handed him the papers. He read them slowly. When he looked up, his face was very still, the way it gets when he's working to keep something controlled. "This doctor," he said, "do you know him?" "I've never met him." He set the papers down carefully. "Okay, what do you need from me?" "I need you to be ready, because in about 2 months, I'm going to ask you to be somewhere with me, and it's going to be uncomfortable." He didn't hesitate. "I'll be there." Walter moved quickly. Dr. Fielding, it turned out, had never examined me. He'd written his letter based entirely on information Garrett and Willa had provided, a fact that Walter's investigator confirmed within 10 days. Walter told me we had not only a strong defense, but potentially grounds for a complaint against Dr. Fielding's medical license. The cognitive evaluation from Dr. Patel was filed with the court. The video statement. Walter's notes from our 2 years of regular conversations about my estate, going back to Gerald's death. My phone records, the group text, Garrett's emails about the cabin trust. All of it documented, organized, ready. And then I sent a text to both of them. Family dinner at the cabin, November 15th, 2 p.m. "I need to talk to you both. Please come." Garrett replied in 20 minutes, "Is this about the petition? We're doing this for you, Mom." Willa replied in an hour, "I'll be there." "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't respond to either of them." I drove up to Boone on the 14th to prepare. The cabin looked exactly like itself. The porch sagging slightly on one side the way it had since Gerald fixed it wrong in 2004, and we'd argued about it for a week. The firewood stacked by the door, the mountains holding still in the way mountains do, like they have no opinion about human drama and are simply waiting. I built a fire. I made chili. I sat on the porch in the cold with a blanket and Gerald's old camp mug and watched the valley go dark. Owen arrived the next morning at 10:30 with a pie from a bakery in Johnson City because, as he put it, tense conversations go better with something sweet on the table. Walter arrived at noon. He sat up at the dining room table with his briefcase open and papers arranged and did not say very much. He didn't need to. At 1:58, two cars came up the gravel drive. Garrett was out first, wearing the kind of wool overcoat that communicates seriousness, his face arranged into what I recognized as his negotiating expression, measured, controlled, already working an angle. Willa came out of her car looking small, her hands jammed into her jacket pockets, her eyes going immediately to me and then to the window where she could see Walter sitting at the table. She stopped walking for a second, then she kept coming. I opened the door before they knocked. "Come in." Garrett walked in and saw Walter and went still. "Why is he here?" I asked him to be. I stepped aside. "Let's sit down." They sat on the sofa. Owen stood near the fireplace with his coffee. Walter stayed at the table. "Is this an ambush?" Garrett asked. "It's a conversation," I said. "The one we should have had a long time ago." I told them about the will. I didn't lead up to it. I said it plainly, the way Bet had taught me to say hard things. I told them the cabin was going to Owen. I told them about the charitable gifts, the bequests to them, the documentation of everything. Willa's face crumpled. Garrett's went very still. "You did this because of the petition," he said. "I did this in March. Before the petition, before the Guardian letter, before the group text about maximizing the asset, before the call where you suggested power of attorney." I looked at him. "I did this when I finally accepted what I was seeing." "What you're seeing?" His voice was controlled but tight. "What are you seeing, Mom? Two kids who are trying to help you?" "I'm seeing two kids who decided I was an obstacle between them and something they'd already started thinking of as theirs. That's not fair." "Garrett, the group text was called Boom Cabin Strategy. You didn't add me to it." I kept my voice steady. "You've been planning around me, not with me." He didn't have an answer for that. Willa spoke quietly. "What about us? What about what we're going through?" "I know what you're going through." She looked up. "I know Rob lost his job in April. I know you're behind on your mortgage. I know Garrett's firm had a difficult year. I know all of it." I paused. "I know because I paid someone to find out because you wouldn't tell me." "You hired someone?" Garrett started. "Yes, because my children were petitioning a court to have me declared financially incompetent, and I needed to understand why. I looked at both of them. I didn't find greed. I found people who are scared and embarrassed and didn't trust me enough to ask for help honestly." Willa started crying. "Why didn't you just ask me?" I said, not angry. Actually curious. It was Willa who answered. "Because asking means owing. Because every time we came to you for something growing up, we heard about it later. Not in a mean way, Mom, but it became part of the record. What you did for us, the dental surgery, Garrett's first car, my wedding flowers, it all got added to this invisible ledger." That hit hard. I wanted to argue. I thought about arguing. Instead, I said, "You're right." She looked surprised. "I kept a ledger. Not to use against you. I didn't mean it that way, but you learned to feel the weight of it regardless." I folded my hands in my lap. "That's on me. I'm not going to pretend otherwise." Garrett was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, less measured, more tired. "I've been scared for 2 years, Mom. The market turned and I made some bad calls and I'm not where I thought I'd be. I thought if I could just get the cabin working as a real income asset, I could get ahead of it. I thought I was solving a problem." "You were solving your problem. With my property? Yes. He said it plainly. I was, and I'm sorry. That was the first honest thing he'd said to me in 2 years. I felt it like a change in air pressure. Walter cleared his throat gently. He pulled 3 envelopes from his briefcase. Lorraine asked me to make a proposal. He explained it. The will stays as written. That was not negotiable, and I needed them to understand it was not punitive. It was decided. But I was prepared to help them, now, directly, in the ways they actually needed. For Willa and Rob, a loan to bring the mortgage current, properly documented, structured through Walter's office, with a repayment plan we'd set together. For Garrett, a conversation about the cabin's rental potential that I would lead on my terms, and if it made sense, I might consider a limited rental agreement that he could help manage with proper compensation, not the asset being turned over, not a trust with his name on it, a conversation. An honest one. The will stays as it is, I said. Owen gets the cabin. That is decided, and it's not about punishing you. It's about honoring what this place has always actually been. I looked at them both. But I am still your mother. And if you can be honest with me, actually honest, then we can figure out the rest together. Garrett looked at Owen. Owen, to his credit, said nothing. He just stood there with his coffee cup, letting whatever was going to happen happen. You really don't resent us? Willa asked Owen quietly. For what? Owen said. I didn't do anything. I just showed up. That was it. That was the whole thing, in 5 words. Willa started crying in a different way then. Not the uncomfortable tears from before, but something more real. The kind that comes when something you've been pretending isn't true becomes impossible to pretend anymore. Garrett took a long breath. He lifted his hands. I don't know how to be a son, he said slowly. I know how to manage things. I know how to plan and optimize and close a deal. I'm not sure I know how to just be someone's kid anymore. I don't know how to let you, I said. I've been managing everything alone for so long that I turned you into problems to solve instead of people to love. That's my half of this. We stayed at that table for 4 hours. We ate the chili. We ate Owen's pie. The kids, my actual children, the adult ones who'd scared me half to death, talked in ways they hadn't since they were young and hadn't yet learned to perform themselves for each other. Garrett told me about the bad investment, the whole of it, not the polished version. Willa told me that the morning I'd called about Bet, she'd put down the phone and gone into the school bathroom and cried for 10 minutes and then pulled herself together and gone back to her classroom because she genuinely did not know how to be sad in front of me without it becoming about my sadness. I didn't know that, I said. I didn't tell you. Owen left first, around 6, shaking Garrett's hand and hugging Willa and hugging me last and longest. At the door, he said to me quietly, You doing okay? Yeah, I said. I think I actually am. Walter packed up his briefcase and left with a nod that managed to convey 30 years of earned professional satisfaction in a single movement. Garrett and Willa stayed. We watched the valley go dark from the porch, the 3 of us with blankets and decaf, and the kind of quiet that only comes when a long, necessary fight is finally over. I still think the deck needs to be redone, Garrett said eventually. I know, I said. I'll do it, in the spring. If Owen will let me. He'll let you? You just have to ask him like he's a person, not an obstacle. Garrett almost smiled. For him, that was a lot. It's been 7 months since that afternoon at the cabin. I won't tell you everything is perfect, because it isn't. And anyone who ends a story like this by telling you everything is perfect is lying to you or to themselves. Garrett still defaults to managing things when he doesn't know how to feel them. Willa still cries at the wrong moments and apologizes for it. I still keep mental records of what I've given and who I've given it to, even when I try not to. But Garrett calls now, not every week, not always for long, but he calls. Last month he called just to tell me about a hiking trail he'd done near Asheville and to ask if I knew it. I did know it. We talked for 20 minutes about a trail. Willa brought the girls up to the cabin in October. We raked leaves and made hot chocolate, and Ivy caught her first fish off the dock and screamed and then laughed so hard she nearly fell in. Willa looked at me over her daughter's head, and something passed between us that I don't have a word for but felt like the beginning of something we should have had years ago. Rob found a new position. They're current on the mortgage. She didn't thank me for the loan in words, but she sent me a photo of their front porch decorated for Halloween, her two girls in costumes, with a text that just said, "We're okay, Mom." That was enough. Owen still comes on Sundays. The cabin is legally his now, the deed transferred in September. He hasn't changed a single thing inside it, which I didn't ask him to do and didn't expect. Gerald's fishing rods still hang on the back wall. The log still sits on the side table, and Owen has started adding his own entries to it, recording snowfall and deer sightings and, on one occasion, a visit from a very determined raccoon. Bet is still fighting. The last round of treatment showed some improvement. Not a victory, not a clean answer, but improvement. She called me last Sunday to tell me, and then we spent 45 minutes talking about her neighbor's HOA situation. She's still funny. She's still sharp. She's still the person I want to call when I don't know how to hear myself think. I'm 69 years old. I live in my house in Asheville and drive up to the cabin when I want to and don't when I don't. I have a will that says exactly what I mean. I have an attorney who has known me since Gerald was alive and knows the difference between who I am and what I own. And I have a family that is slowly, imperfectly, genuinely learning the difference between showing up for someone and just waiting for something. That's the truth I was looking for. Not the one I imagined. Not the comfortable version I'd been pretending was real. The actual one. The one that costs something and therefore means something. If you're watching this, comment where you're from. I still need to know I'm not alone in this, and I don't think I am anymore. I've been sitting with this story for a while now, trying to figure out what it actually taught me. Not the surface version, not stand up for yourself or know your worth, the kind of thing you'd find printed on a throw pillow. The real thing, the thing underneath. What I keep coming back to is this. The way we love people teaches them how to treat us. I didn't know that when I was raising Garrett and Willa. I thought I was being generous. I thought every check written and every crisis absorbed and every silence swallowed was an act of love. And it was in its way. But it was also an instruction. I was teaching them, lesson by lesson, that I didn't have edges, that I would always absorb more, that my needs would always come last, and that was fine, and there would be no consequences for it ever. And they learned. Of course they learned. Children always learn what we actually teach them, not what we intend to. The hard part, the part I had to sit with in that kitchen at 2 a.m, was realizing that what looked like their failure was also mine. Not entirely mine. They're adults. They made choices. Garrett chose to treat a family memory like a real estate asset. Willa chose to let her brother lead her into something she knew in her gut was wrong. Those were their decisions. But the ground those decisions grew in? I helped prepare that ground. That's the truth I didn't want to look at for a long time. What changed things wasn't anger. Anger I'd had plenty of, quietly, for years. What changed things was clarity. The kind that only comes when you stop making excuses for people you love and start actually watching what they do. Owen didn't have a speech prepared. He didn't make a case for himself. He just showed up, with firewood, with soup, with an hour and 35-minute drive in the middle of a weekday, because that's what you do when someone matters to you. That simplicity was the clearest mirror I'd ever held up to everything else. I think about the word incompetent a lot. That's what they filed. That's the word they chose. And what I had to decide, what I think anyone in a version of this situation has to decide, is whether you're going to accept other people's definitions of you or whether you're going to make your own. I wasn't incompetent. I was finally, after decades of quietly disappearing into the role of mother and fixer and safety net, deciding to be a person. A full one. With a will that said what I meant and an attorney who knew the difference between who I was and what I owned. The cabin is Owen's now. Garrett redid the deck last spring. Willa brought the girls in October, and Ivy caught her first fish. None of that was in my plan. Plans don't usually account for the possibility that things could actually get better. What I know is that the moment I stopped waiting to be seen and started protecting what I knew to be true about myself, that's when everything shifted. Not because I punished anyone, not because I won, but because I finally told the truth, clearly and without apology, and let people decide what they wanted to do with it. Some of them surprised me. That's the part no one tells you about holding your ground. Sometimes the people you love actually rise to meet you there.